Hi, my name is Jack. I'm a designer and video maker living in London, and today I'm going to be talking about software support for Google Pixel phones. So Google officially supports Google Pixel phones with 3 years of both software and security updates, meaning for a phone like the Pixel 2 XL, this year's Android update, Android 11, will be the final one it gets. Now, comparing this to Apple, their latest software update is iOS 14, and that is actually supported by the iPhone 6s, which was released in September 2015. So comparing apples to apples, or I guess Apple to Google, Apple supports their phones currently for 5 years, whereas Google only supports theirs for 3 years. Another point that needs to be made here is that Google Pixel phones actually usually get better software support compared to other Android phones. So if you own a Samsung phone, for example, then it might not even get 3 years of software support. I don't think that's the whole story though, so I think it's worth comparing Google's latest version of the Pixel 5, to the Pixel 2 XL and see what's changed in 3 years. Is it possible to own a Pixel for more than 3 years? Or because of this software update cycle, 3 years is the maximum amount of time you can own a Pixel and you have to upgrade after that stage. So the first factor I'm actually going to be comparing these phones on, despite this video being about software and performance, is actually the hardware. Now I'm only going to go over this briefly because obviously a 3-year-old phone isn't going to have as nice hardware as a brand new phone, but I just want to point out some factors in case anyone's interested. So new hardware features that the Pixel 5 has compared to the Pixel 2 includes featuring an almost identically sized screen but on a smaller body. So as mentioned, this is the Pixel 2 XL opposed to a normal Pixel 2, and this phone now feels pretty giant and the bezels on the front seem ridiculously big and kind of comical at this point. I remember when I first got this phone. Some child screaming outside. I remember when I first got this phone, I actually thought this display was like amazing for being so edge to edge, and I preferred the fact that it didn't have a notch or anything. This was before cutouts were a feature of displays, which the Pixel 5 has now, but obviously the front of the Pixel 5 looks a lot better with no big forehead or chin. One thing that has been sacrificed by this change though is I'd say the speakers on the Pixel 2 are way better than that on the Pixel 5. The Pixel 2 has 2 front-facing speakers. They're in like a stereo pattern, compared to the Pixel 5, which has a speaker at the bottom and then another smaller speaker in the earpiece. This doesn't produce nowhere near as good a sound as the Pixel 2, and also I find having the speaker on the bottom of the phone, I cover it more often, which really muffles the sound. The Pixel 5 also now features wireless charging, which the Pixel 2 didn't, and the Pixel 5 has an IP68 waterproof rating, which the Pixel 2 does not. So now on to the more important part of this video, performance. I would say despite the age difference between these two phones, there isn't actually a massive performance difference. I know some people might think that's because the Pixel 5 doesn't have the top of the end new processor, which has been a pretty common complaint from Google fans, but I would actually say that's more due to the fact that the Pixel 2 still runs the latest version of Android really well. Both phones feel really smooth when you're going around the OS, if you're scrolling on social media apps. There is kind of a perceived speed increase on the Pixel 5 compared to the Pixel 2, but I think that's mainly down to the higher refresh rate screen on the Pixel 5. If you don't know, the Pixel 5 has a 90Hz display compared to the 60Hz one on the Pixel 2, allowing the screen to refresh more often, so information is displayed quicker. When going around the OS and using apps, it does make the Pixel 5 feel a bit more smooth and fluid, but I wouldn't say that's because it has better performance, but more just because it has a nicer screen. For my phone, I wouldn't say I'm exactly like a high-end user. I don't really push it that far. Especially while I'm working from home and not commuting, I've always got my laptop here for more performance-heavy tasks. I'd say the most I push my phone is a bit of photo editing on Lightroom CC, which both the Pixel 2 and Pixel 5 handle fine. I also don't really play any games on my phone, so I can't comment on the performance difference between these two phones for gaming. But going from my other use cases, I'd imagine gaming is just fine on Pixel 2, but it would be a massive draw on battery, but I'll be talking about battery life a bit more later. So to conclude on performance, both of these phones for normal day-to-day tasks, social media, email, messaging, all works absolutely fine on both these devices, and you really don't feel the age of the Pixel 2. Now on to everyone's favourite topic when it comes to Pixel phones, and that is the camera. A big benefit to having a Google Pixel phone is the software and AI that Google implement to make the cameras better than the hardware should actually be. This also means over time your Pixel camera actually gets better because of the new AI and software innovations that Google makes with their new software updates. So over the 3 years I used the Pixel 2 XL, the camera actually got significantly better with new added features and generally better performance. The Pixel 5 camera is definitely better than the Pixel 2, but I wouldn't say it's 3 years better. Added features like the wide angle camera are really nice and can be useful in certain circumstances. I'd say night sight is also a lot better on this phone, as well as portrait mode, but all these features still work fairly well on the Pixel 2. So when it comes to taking photos, there's not a huge leap from this phone to this phone, but when it comes to video, there is a giant difference. Video is significantly better on the Pixel 5, even compared to the Pixel 4. They really focused on improving video on this phone, as I know generally people thought Pixel video looked terrible. Some of the videos I recorded a few months ago before I got my Canon M50 were actually made on the Pixel 2, and to be honest, I just generally wasn't happy with the video quality from this phone, but it was the only device I had at the time to record with. But now with the Pixel 5, it's got way better image stabilization, the general picture quality is a lot better, and I'll do a quick video test just to demonstrate this fact. So on your screen right now, on the left you can see the Pixel 5 video, and on the right you can see the Pixel 2 video. I'm trying to get what I'm filming as similar as possible. Let's get close for some autofocus. Have a look out for the stabilization. I'll also switch between the microphones on both these phones so you can have a good hear of how the sound is. In my opinion, the Pixel 5 video is way better. Let me know what you think. So I'd say the biggest difference between these two phones is actually battery life. I've been using the Pixel 5 for almost a month now, and not a single day have I managed to completely kill the battery on this device. It's actually incredible. Last weekend I went on a 6-hour cycle and I tracked the entire journey, so using GPS for about 6 or 7 hours, with Strava, and once I got home I still had enough battery to last on my phone till I went to bed that night. Now I think that's absolutely incredible. When I was using my Pixel 2 to track bike rides, after about 2 or 3 hours of tracking, the battery would just completely die, going from 100% to 0. There was even times when I was out on rides and the battery would just die because I didn't have a battery pack, leaving me to have to finish my ride with no battery so I couldn't track my ride, or if there was an emergency I wouldn't have a phone with me. I should also mention with the Pixel 5, this does have 5G and a higher refresh rate. Both are well-known battery killers, yet the battery is still amazing on this phone, and it's actually probably my favourite feature of this phone. So when comparing these two phones on that aspect, there is actually no competition at all. So I don't know if they've just really increased the system requirements of Android 11 so it doesn't run well on the Pixel 2, or maybe Google have intentionally tried to make this device obsolete by ruining the battery through software updates. Either way, 3 years later, the battery life on this phone was shocking. I could never get through a whole day of using it, and honestly, it was the main deciding factor for me when I decided to upgrade to the Pixel 5. So to conclude the comparison of these phones and discussing whether you can use a Pixel phone for more than 3 years, I'll say if it wasn't for how much worse the battery life got on the Pixel 2, I'd probably still be using it now and wouldn't have bought a Pixel 5. And to be honest, another year or two of software updates for this phone would probably make the battery performance worse. So obviously the Pixel 5 is the better phone between these two phones. You knew that when coming to watch this video. It's 3 years newer, it's meant to be the latest and greatest that Google can offer, so it's bound to be better than this phone they made 3 years ago. Obviously this phone is £400 more expensive than if you wanted to find this phone to buy used or even new on eBay now. But in my opinion, the battery life on this phone is unusable at this point. The performance is fine, the camera is fine, but battery life just kills it for me. Despite the fact I don't think future software updates would improve this phone, I do still think Google should support their phones for longer. I think the lack of security updates after 3 years is probably the big sticking point there. So maybe if they did a bit of a hybrid, after 3 years they stopped doing full software support for their phone, but continued doing security updates if and when they were needed. that would make a lot more sense, maybe up to 5 years. But obviously, I think everyone would just prefer if they gave Pixel phones the same 5-year software support that iPhones get. So that just about wraps up this video. Let me know your thoughts on this topic in the comments section below. I've actually recently started a new Instagram account, so if you're interested in that, I'll leave a link in the description to that and also my Twitter. If you want to see more videos like this, then please do subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.